unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done.
Thanks for singing along with us this morning. If you're enjoying the music, we have a mission trip concert this afternoon at 3 o'clock, which is a student-led concert. We'll be playing music we'd like to sing and praises to Jesus. So if you'd like, please come join us today at 3 o'clock here in the church.
From the highest of heights to the depths of the sea, creation's revealing your majesty. From the colors of fall to the fragrance of spring, every creature unique in the song that it sings, all exclaiming, indescribable, uncontainable. You place the stars in the sky and you know them by name. You are amazing, God. All powerful, untamable, awestruck we fall to our knees as we humbly proclaim, you are amazing, God. Who has told every lightning bolt where it should go, or seen heavenly storehouses laden with snow? Who imagined the sun and gives source to his light, yet conceals it to bring us the coolness of night? creatures of our God and King. Lift up your voice and with us sing. Oh, praise Him. Hallelujah. Thou burning sun that glowing beam, thou silver moon with softer gleam. Oh, praise Him. Oh, praise Him. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
In all things,
Let all things their Creator bless,
and worship Him.
and worship Him in humbleness. Oh, praise Him. Hallelujah. Praise, praise the Father, praise the Son, and praise the Spirit, three in one. Oh, praise Him. Oh, praise Him. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Amen.
Happy Sabbath, everybody. So, today's offering is for Adventist Media Ministry. And in North America, the Seventh-day Adventist Church is a leader in television media ministry since television's inception. For more than 65 years, we've been proclaiming God's good news for a better life today and for eternity. The television ministries of the North American division, including Breath of Life with Carlton Bird, and Faith for Today with Mike Tucker, It Is Written with John Bradshaw, and Jesus 101 with Elizabeth Talbot. These ministries continue to produce life-changing television programs with new and fresh content. All of these programs can be seen on the Hope Channel and Esperanza TV, many other networks across North America, and on a wide array of internet platforms. Since the first Adventist television programs aired with William Fagall, George Vanderman, and C.D. Brooks, our church has used television to help people take their first steps of faith and prepare them to spend eternity with their Creator. Our television programs look very different today, but the mission remains the same. Adventist Media Television never stops. Right this moment, someone is hearing about a crucified, risen, and soon coming Savior. It might be your neighbor or a member of your family. Thank you for your spirit of faithfulness and sacrifice. Producing relevant media is costly, but the benefits are priceless. So would the deacons come forward, and would you all bow your heads with me as we pray? Dear God, I ask that you will bless today's offering and cause it to multiply. Thank you for all the blessings that you have given us, and for using people's skills to spread the gospel around the world. Amen.
It is now time for the children's story. So any young boys and little girls that want to come up to hear a story, it is now time. And if the parents are like jealous that they don't get a parent story, you guys should send a lot of money, and maybe next week we can afford a parent story. So give that to the kids and have them come up. Hey guys, how's it going? Everybody had a good week? That's good. Well, today I'm going to tell you a story about when I was around your guys' size, a little bit younger. How many of you guys have a favorite toy? Everyone? Yeah? What is your guys' favorite toy?
The dragon.
Dragon? What about you?
A ninja spy kit.
Whoa. How about yours?
A Barbie doll.
Oh, Barbie doll. Those are all really great toys. But when I was little, one of my favorite toys was a transformer. I don't know if the kids still play with those, but what they were like some kind of vehicle or something, and they're all these little pieces, and you could like pull it apart, and you could like recreate it into like a robot. So it was a car, and all of a sudden it was a robot, and it was really fun because you could just switch in between the two. Well, my family and I, we were on a trip, and we were staying in a hotel. And I had this transformer toy that I loved to play with, and I would run around the hotel. It had like a really cool, on its arm, it had like a missile. You like press the little button and it shot this missile out. And so I was running around the hotel room, shooting my little sister probably, getting her all mad at me, and shooting the wall and stuff, until I saw that there was a window looking out of the hotel room, and we were probably on the 5th floor, probably, and I wondered, I was like, it was open actually. I wondered, I was like, man, I bet I could shoot it through that window. It was a challenge, right? Who doesn't love a challenge? So I got in position and I aimed the little arm and I shot the missile. And sure enough, I got it right through the window. And once I did it, I realized, man, where did my missile go? So I went up and I looked through the window and I looked down, and below I could see the swimming pool for the hotel, but right under the window there was like a patch of bushes and trees and grass and stuff. And so I was like, oh boy, I lost my missile. It's gone. And I ran screaming to my parents, like, oh, I lost this missile. How could I do this? And I thought for sure it was gone forever. I mean, it's in like trees and bushes. It's just a little tiny missile. How could I find it? But so I continued. I kind of forgot about it. The next few days I spent at the pool playing with my brother and sister or out in the sun. And I realized as I was playing the pool, my dad, he was over in the bushes on his hands and knees, digging around, looking for the missile in the trees. And he spent a few days doing that he couldn't find it at first. We all kind of thought it was gone, but he didn't give up. He kept looking for it. And a few days later, he actually found my missile in the bushes and the trees, which was amazing in itself. I was really excited. I was like, yes, I got this missile back. I can keep playing with my transformer. So I went back to running around the hotel room, shooting my sister, until I saw another challenge. And this one was a lot harder. But you guys, in a door, there's like that little hole where the lock goes in. I thought, man, I wonder if this little missile would shoot in that little hole. So I stood back and I shot it in the hole, and I got it right in. I was really good with it, I guess. And all of a sudden disappeared. It dropped down into the door where the lock goes, and I didn't know where it went. And that time my dad could not get it out, because if he did that, he would be destroying the hotel's property, and it probably wasn't worth it for a little plastic toy. But the point of the story is that God has given us something. He came to earth and he died on the cross for all of us, for every single one, so that we can all have the chance to get to heaven. He gave us a gift. Now, some people are going to accept that gift, but some people are going to take that and throw it back and say, I don't want it. But God knew this when he did that, but that didn't change what he did. That didn't make him think, oh boy, I know some people on earth, they're not going to like me, so I might as well just not go. It's not worth it. They're just going to throw it away. But he still came, just like my dad, still looked for it, even though afterwards I just threw it away and lost it all. So make sure you guys remember that when you're going through life and you think about what God has done for you. He didn't just do it for you to be good, but if you mess up and fail, he still did it for you, and he loves you no matter what. You can all please go back to your seat. Thank you.
Man, I don't know about you, but I need some healing. I got aches and pains. I also got emotional pains, and I need some healing. And I'm so happy to know that Jesus can heal us. Amen. If we believe in him. And at this time, I would like to invite you to stand as we sing this one song, Healer. And as you're singing this song, believe in it. Believe in the God of this song. Jesus can heal us today, in fact. He can heal me. He can heal you today. And let's lift every voice. Sing it like you mean it. Here we go. You hold. You hold my every moment. Yes. You calm my raging sea. You walk with me through fire. Yes. You heal all my disease. Trust. I trust in you. I trust in you. I believe you're my healer. I believe you are all I need.
Jesus, you're all I need.
You may be seated at this time.
If you have any prayer requests, go ahead and bring them up right now. You can write them on the card in front of you and place them in this basket to be prayed over.
Are you hurting and broken within? Overwhelmed by the weight of your sin? Jesus is calling. Have you come to the end of yourself? Do you thirst for a drink from the well? Jesus is calling. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Leave behind your regrets and mistakes. Come today, there's no reason to wait. Jesus is calling. Bring your sorrows and trade them for joy. From the ashes a new life is born. Jesus is calling. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. What a Savior, isn't He wonderful? Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Bow down before Him, for He is Lord of all. Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Oh, what a Savior, isn't He wonderful? Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Bow down before Him, for He is Lord of all. Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness
beautiful Sabbath day. We can come here and worship you and fellowship with our friends and family. Please be with us this day. Help us to focus on you. Remind us that it's all about you. Please be with the rest of the service and help it to go well. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Yeah, these are old shoes that I've been walking in. I'm wearing weary like it's a second skin. I've been looking for a place to lay my head. And all this time, like a vagabond, a homeless stranger, I've been wandering all my life. You've been calling me to home. You know I've been needing. I'm a broken stone. So lay me in the house you're building. You are a shelter for every misfit soul. We are the four walls and you're the cornerstone. You are, and you're the solid rock that we are built upon. And all this time, like a vagabond, a homeless stranger, I've been wandering all my life. You've been calling me to home. You know I've been needing. I'm a broken stone. So lay me in the house you're building, 'cause in you I find my meaning, yeah. And in you I find my beauty. All this time, like a vagabond, a homeless stranger, I've been wandering all my life. You've been calling me to home. You know I've been needing all this time, like a vagabond, a homeless stranger. I've been wandering all my life. You've been calling me to home. You know I've been needing. I'm a broken stone. So lay me in the house you're building. Lay me in the house you're building. In the house you're building.
How's everybody doing today? friends here, my friend Anthony over here, fellow alumni of Walla Walla, class of 2010. He stopped in to visit today, and he's like, oh man, there's a lot of student involvement. I was like, yeah, it's senior dedication. And then I caught myself because I realized that this is pretty much every Sabbath. And we have an amazing church. On top of that, as I say that, we have potluck every month. Unfortunately, we're having to cancel today. So if you're planning on eating, there's food someplace, just not here. So, but with that being said, next weekend, okay, this next coming weekend, the 20th, we're having our second all-church visioning session. Our second one. If you missed the first one, you missed out. But if you missed the second one, then, the door's back. I'm just kidding. Seriously, this is an incredible moment where you, as a church family, where we as a church family can come together and talk about where does God want to put us in this whole thing. Like, what are we here for? What is our goal? How are we going to accomplish it? So we hope to see you there. It's after church. It's a potluck after church, and we hope to see you there. But today I am, as you see in the bulletin, I'm Ryan Bing. And, we are Ryan Bing, together. I'm Jesse. I'm the youth pastor here. And today is our senior dedication Sabbath. Last night, there was a whole program. All the seniors were up here, and all of them walked 2 by 2, just like Noah's Ark, 2 by 2, up to the stage, except for this man. He walked all by himself. I don't know, how did you manage that? You don't even know? He doesn't even know. It just happened. This is Ryan. He's a senior here at Auburn. I almost said Walla Walla. Someday at Walla Walla. Yeah. He's a senior here at Auburn, and we're going to be speaking to you today. But go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Ryan Bing. I'm a senior here, so that means I'll be graduating with the class of 2016. I kind of grew up in the church. I've been here since I was 3 years old. Before that, I was born in Kansas, and so, yeah.
And then he migrated out to where stuff grows. That's green, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just making sure. I'm just kidding. But today we want to talk to you about a couple things. I want to talk to you about stories, about the fact that everyone has a story. I want to talk to you about David. I want to talk to you about Solomon. Ryan and I are both going to share a little bit of our stories, and we're going to talk about Jesus. How's that sound? Okay. Well, let me just tell you, we're going to start off chronologically with David. David's a man that I can relate to, and I'll share that in a little bit, but let's just kind of go over the story of David. David was a shepherd. He just started off being a shepherd, right? Nothing special. There were no crazy plans for his life. For the rest of his life, he was going to be in this role, right? But then all of a sudden, one day, out of nowhere, Samuel shows up, says, God told me to come here and find a king. But David's not there. So Jesse, his father, brings out all of the kids except for David, because it's assumed that, you got to find someone in the first three. You're not going to find David here at the end, but none of them are chosen. So David ends up being the one that is chosen. Yeah? Well, what goes on in his life is, after that, you see that he's fought bears and he's fought lions. And then he goes and he fights Goliath. And after that, he gets called into Saul's court. And in Saul's court, he plays music and he does all this stuff, but Saul becomes jealous of him. And when Saul becomes jealous of him, he tries to kill him, because that's totally normal. And so he tries to kill him, and he's chasing him around all of Israel. I don't know if you guys realize that Israel's the size of New Jersey. It's not a big place. David's in constant danger. So David's running away from Saul, and there's this battle between the two of them. But finally, God does what he said he was going to do. He makes him the king of Israel. He makes David the king of Israel. And in that moment, everything that had been going on in David's life, back when he was a shepherd and God was preparing him by building his character, and he was learning things from his parents, and to when he was fighting bears and lions and learning how to fight, and when he was fighting Goliath and learning that he could have faith in God. And all of this stuff leads up to this point, this one moment of fulfillment where David becomes king. And then after that, David goes and wins some incredible victories. Like David took the kingdom of Israel and pretty much built it. Saul had this tiny little kingdom, but David built the foundation for what would be Israel and Judah for the rest of time. So David does all this. And you see as we come to 2 Samuel chapter 10 that he's won all these incredible victories, and they're going to go siege another city. But when he goes to when the army goes to siege it, David isn't with them. He's been with them at every other point, but he's not with them this time. Because it's really easy to get really confident in your ability, and it's really easy to get confident in what you've done and forget that it takes faith and it takes action continuously to actually build that in your life. So David stays, and then this whole thing with Bathsheba happens. And then it becomes a cycle of David trying to figure out, after this moment of David trying to figure out, how do I let God be in control and not get really too confident about where I am. But let me just go back, because this is why I relate to this story, because David came out of nowhere, yeah? I grew up, my parents were first generation Adventists. They had become Adventists 2 years before I was born. So it wasn't like your great out to the 8th generation grandfather was a pastor, therefore you will be too. It was like there wasn't like a specific place I was going to be. I was just going to be doing Jesse up until the point that I stopped doing Jesse. So as I grew up, my mom and my dad instilled in me character, and they instilled in me these ideas of who I should be. Just as David, in the monotony of his life, in the simpleness of his life, was being built for the future, so was I. I just want to be, I'm not David. Let's just be clear here. I'm just similarities. Just like David was being built, I was being built. And it came to this point where when I was 12 years old, I had like this normal life, right? Actually, let me just be clear. My mother, since I was like, couldn't even understand the words she said, has been telling me, Jesse, when you were in my womb, God spoke to me and told me you were going to do incredible things. She's been telling me that my whole life. And I'm sure a lot of you parents have done the same thing with your children. And if you don't understand it, parents, us kids, we're just like, whatever. Cool. And that's kind of how I approached it. But when I was 12, we found out my dad was having an affair. My parents divorced a year later. My dad went to prison. And all of a sudden, this life that had been monotonous and kind of like whatever, all of a sudden now I had bears and lions in my life that I had to face. And through that, a lot of the time we look at the struggles in our life and we think, why? And at the time I did, but as I look back at it now, I realize that just as David was being prepared in those moments, God was teaching me stuff. And it depends on how you look at it. If you look at it as I'm a victim, you won't get anywhere with it. But if you look back and think, wow, God was preparing me, I had stuff to learn, all of a sudden it has purpose, it has meaning. So God did that with me. And I got really into God. My junior year of high school, I got super into God, right? Like, planned a youth rally with some of my friends. And I remember we had, like, Bible studies in the back there where James is. And I see you. Back where James is and Joe, and they're all texting, right? Yeah, I see you. Back there, we had Bible studies. Because, like, we were just super on fire for God. But then what happens after a fire is lit is you have to keep it going. And that's the hard part. Because you can like the warmth that it brings, but then you got to keep feeding it. And so what happened is, after a little while, I started to think, I kind of want to be able to do the things I want to do. I want to be able to date the people I want to date. I want to be able to just kind of make my own decisions, listen to what I want to listen to. And all of a sudden, there was a battle in my life between the Saul side of my life that wanted control of my own life and the David side that's like, I kind of want God to be in control. And so now there's this war between Saul and David in my life. And Saul won for a while. But then finally, I go to college. I'm in college, and I start off engineering. Where's Connor? Connor, good luck, buddy. Because I started off engineering for 2 quarters. And then God was like, nope, you're going this way. And he had me switch to theology. Not because engineering is bad, but because God just had a different plan for my life. So good luck with that one, Connor. I'll see you up here in a few years. God had a plan, and in that moment where I switched to theology, that was that moment where everything God had been preparing me for now was the start of that journey all over again. It was that fulfillment, right? And so I started off in theology, and God did incredible things. Like, there was incredible victories, just like David, when he became king. Afterwards, there was these incredible victories. Like, I was able to lead worship for thousands of people at Walla Walla. And then some friends and I, Anthony and I, and a couple other people, we started a church at Walla Walla, and it's still going. Anthony actually just passed it off to Matt Berghardt, an Auburn alumnus. I mean, it's an incredible, incredible amount of things that were able to happen. And now I'm a youth pastor, and I've seen so many victories that God has won. But guess what my biggest weakness is? Is believing that somehow I've gotten myself here. And just like David had Bathsheba in his life, there are Bathshebas we have in our lives. Because once we get someplace and we get confident with what God has been doing in our lives, now we have something else to worry about, and that's overconfidence. And whether that's just as simple as, I really want to be doing stuff for God, but I'm not actually spending time with him and I don't know him, so I'm just kind of doing stuff for him without doing it with him, that may be your Bathsheba. Because that's kind of mine. And so it's that cycle now of trying to figure out, how do I stay confident in God, but not confident in myself? And it's that cycle. And where I want to pass this off to Ryan is this idea that David was viewed in such a way by the people around him as being perfect and having everything together. But if you look at his life, there's a struggle inside, right? Because his story, what everybody's seeing on the outside, was one thing, but his story, what God was doing in his life, was a completely different thing. And there was struggle involved in that. It's not always perfect.
So I'm going to be talking about Solomon. Now, I really relate to Solomon just through the story he's been through and just some of the struggles that he went through in his life. So in this story, it comes time for David to tell Solomon that he's going to be king. He gives advice on how to be a good king, and even though this is advice, it could have easily come off as just pressure for Solomon. If you look with me in 1 Kings chapter 2, this is the story of David telling Solomon that he will be king. Verses 2 to 4 says, I am about to go the way of all the earth. Be strong and show yourself a man, and keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways and keeping his statutes, his commandments, his rules, and his testimonies. As is written in the law of Moses, that you may prosper in all that you do and wherever you turn, that the Lord may establish his word that he spoke concerning me, saying, if your son pays close attention to their way to walk before me in faithfulness with all their heart and with all their soul, you shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel. So even with all this pressure, Solomon did turn out to be a pretty good king. He built a temple for God, which is something that David had been wanting to do. And if you move over to 1 Kings chapter 10, this is the story of the Queen of Sheba coming over to visit Solomon. In verse 2 it says, she came to Jerusalem with a very great retinue, with camels bearing spices, very much gold, and precious stones. And when she came to Solomon, she told him all that was on her mind. So you can see how respected Solomon was at the time. You can see how people thought he was a great king. Like, he built a temple for God for them. And he is even considered to be the wisest man ever to live. In 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 12, it says, behold, I now do according to your word. Behold, I give you a wise and discerning mind, so that none like you has been before you, and none like you shall arise after you. But the Bible also shows that Solomon wasn't perfect. He had his own struggles in life, and he had his own problems. Although the Bible never says this, I believe that throughout Solomon's life, he was trying to differentiate himself from his father. He wanted to show that he wasn't the same king as David. He didn't want to just follow in his father's shadow or didn't want to continue doing the same thing that he was doing. For example, David grew a kingdom. Solomon expanded the kingdom. David had several wives. Solomon had several hundred wives. All of these wives started to influence Solomon. He started to build idols so they could worship whatever God they wanted to. And God even warned Solomon and commanded him to not associate with the foreign women. He said, "For they will surely turn your heart towards their gods." But Solomon didn't listen, and he continued onto his path. Another place that you can see Solomon is struggling with problems and how unhappy he is in Ecclesiastes. This entire book, you can see that Solomon is struggling, and he tells us that pleasure, success, and riches don't make you happy. If you look in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 1 and 2, it says, "I said in my heart, 'Come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. But behold, this was also vanity.' I said of laughter, 'Is it mad?' And of pleasure, what use is it?" So in this, you see that even though Solomon has all these things going for him, like he was king of an entire kingdom, he still wasn't happy. Just like Solomon tried to differentiate himself from his father, I've done the same thing. Through most of my life, I have tried to escape the term PK. I would try to do anything just to prove that I wasn't some pastor's kid. Later on, I realized that I sometimes did things just to not be put into a box as a PK. For example, when I was in 6th grade, we weren't allowed to drink energy drinks or anything. And so, to be cool and to show that I wasn't some goody-goody, I would drink energy drinks. And I would even sneak out of after school and go to Shortstop and buy an energy drink and then brag to my friends about how I had done this the next day. When in reality, I had just come back to the church and hid in the bathroom stall drinking an energy drink before my mom realized I was gone. But no matter how hard I tried or whatever I did, it didn't help. And on top of this, most of the stuff I did brought me to even a worse place in life. I got involved in things I'm not proud of. I would intentionally cuss just to show that I wasn't a perfect PK, that I felt people wanted me to be. I did other things that got me even into worse places in life. But nothing changed, because I was trying to get rid of who I am. And you can't do that. I'm a pastor's kid, and there's nothing I can do to change that. All I can do is change my perspective on how I look. I can view it as a benefit in life, or I can look at it as something that weighs me down. But no matter what way I look at it, I'm still a pastor's kid. I'm also like the common people, or just anyone else who thought Solomon was this great and perfect king. Because when I was growing up, I thought Connor Heuven was the coolest, most perfect kid ever. He always got good grades, and he didn't even have to try. He could talk to anyone he wanted to, and this still amazes me because to this day I hate talking to people I don't know. And I just mess up, and I just say the stupidest stuff. But Connor, he seemed to always keep his cool around anyone he wanted to. He was really athletic, and he was good at anything he picked up. Even the Transformer toy he had, he could shoot that anywhere he wanted to. I never pictured him as having a problem. I didn't see what he could have problems with. He was perfect. But that all changed one day when I went to his house, and I started talking to him about some of the problems I was going through. And we started talking, and he told me about all the problems that he was going through, and they were the exact same ones I was going through. This totally changed the way I was looking at him. It brought him down to my level. He wasn't this perfect kid. He was my friend and a human being just like me. And now, I still look up to Connor to this day, but he'll be the first one to admit that he isn't perfect.
And that's kind of the story. Is this idea that everyone has a story and that no one is perfect. But just like we all have a story, I think the most beautiful thing is that God decided that he was also going to have a story. See, it's Valentine's Day, so we're going to talk about the greatest story, yeah? We shared stuff about our lives, about Solomon, about David, because we can relate to them. But God decided to have a story as well. Because I think what hit me was God could have decided to just have a story that was far away in heaven in a place that didn't make sense to us. Right? But instead, he decided that he was going to come into our situation, into our context, and he was going to have a story within that. And I think we're privileged because we've never really lived in a time where we didn't know the idea of Emmanuel, of Matthew 1:23, of God with us. We haven't ever not known that. I mean, the Jews had that, but God was hidden behind a veil. And there was still so much about him that was unknown. But all that changed because all of a sudden, God comes as a baby. The God who at Sinai shook a mountain and was covering it in a cloud with thunder and scaring every single person around, all of a sudden was the little baby who couldn't even speak. He didn't skip a step. He didn't just show up and like, hey, I'm God. He came as a baby. And then that baby grew into a young boy who I can imagine was tormented for simply being different than other people. And then that boy grew into a teenager who had to work for his dad. And he had to learn how to be a carpenter. And he becomes an adult. He's a guy who took pride in what he did, as I'm sure a lot of you do with your work. But then he started his ministry. And people literally hated him. They hated him just because he was claiming to represent something that they couldn't grasp. They assumed things about him because of where he was, where he's from. They just assumed things about him because they didn't know who he was. And through it all, there's like a battle going on for his life, because I don't think Satan was making it easy for him. I mean, this always gets me. Movies often portray Jesus as like this guy who is like super stoic. And the Lord said, I'm just like, I don't imagine that Jesus was anything like that. We imagine that Jesus always like had the perfect thing to say and was always thinking the right, like in the perfect way, which I believe to a degree, but I don't believe it was as like put together as we often imagine. I imagine Jesus had an inner turmoil going on that we can't even begin to understand, though we see it mirrored in our own lives. Because here is Satan trying to tell him. Every time the Pharisees come up to him and are like, hey, guess what? Let me ask you this question, try to trap you. Every time the Pharisees come up to him like that, Satan's trying to get him to believe they're never going to get you. They're never going to believe you. Everything you're doing is worthless. And though I don't believe Jesus ever believed that, can you imagine the struggle it was to believe it? As everyone around him seemed to not get him. And then on the cross, while Jesus is there on the cross, people are looking at him and saying, you know what? If he really was the Son of God, then he'd go ahead and hop off. But the beauty of the story of Jesus is that it didn't end like a superhero movie. He wasn't down and defeated and he found like this new power and like ripped himself off the cross Hulk style. He simply laid down his life. He met the same fate that we meet in this life. He didn't try and escape any part of our lives. Jesus' story wasn't superhero, it was human. A God choosing to limit himself in every way, not only to humanity, but even to the temptations and the fallen nature of humanity. And in every way means that he decided that he was going to let himself die. But there's beauty to it, because he rose again and defeated everything that we struggle with. He defeated death. He defeated sin. God has a story, but it's not just a story out some faraway place that we can't understand. It's a story of God with us, alongside us, among us.
We all have a story. When we start to realize everyone has a story, we begin to realize we are all human. We all mess up. We all go through struggles. Even Jesus came down so he could connect with us through our struggles. He has been through all of the struggles we have gone through, and even more. When you realize that you are alone, or whenever you are alone and feel like you can't get out, just know that you aren't alone and God will always provide. So knowing we all have stories, we need to realize that others have stories. In Matthew 7, verse 3, it says, "Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye?" In other words, we can't go around looking at other people's and assuming that their story is the same as ours and that they're doing something wrong. We can't put our stories in their lives and try to fix it. They have their own stories. They have gotten to where they are now through their own struggles and through their own trials. So as we leave here today, just remember that no matter what struggle or pain you are in, Jesus came down to suffer that pain for you and to be able to comfort you through those struggles. He came down and had a story of his own so that he could connect with us. But not only that, is he took all the times we mess up in life to the grave. He came, had a story, and died with all of our sins. So that when we mess up, we don't need to be ashamed of it. We don't need to try to hide it. Because not only do our mistakes mold who we are today, we have Jesus in our stories. And he outweighs all the times we mess up in life. So if we know that everyone has their own unique story, our job isn't to judge it. Our job is to look and try to find what Jesus is doing already. Let's pray. Dear Jesus, thank you for this day. Thank you for all the things you've done for us. Thank you for coming down and having a story so we could connect with you, and just thank you for everything you're doing in everybody's lives, and just help us to have a good Sabbath. Amen.
call me out.